Well, Maria, the clash between Jordan Peterson and Pope Francis has certainly stirred things up, hasn't it? It seems like the age-old question of the Church's role in the world has been reignited. Absolutely, George. And it's a fascinating debate, touching upon some really fundamental issues. I mean, on one hand, you have Peterson, this, let's call him an unconventional Christian thinker, emphasizing personal responsibility, very much an individualistic approach to faith. He often talks about the importance of finding meaning in life through personal accountability and facing challenges head-on. His ideas resonate with many who feel lost in the complexities of modern life, offering a sense of direction and purpose. Right, almost like a modern-day prophet, but one speaking in the language of psychology and self-help. He bridges the gap between ancient wisdom and contemporary issues, making age-old principles accessible to a new generation. His approach is both intellectual and practical, which is a rare combination in today's world. His 12 rules for life really struck a chord with a lot of people, didn't it? Even outside religious circles. The book offers practical advice on how to live a meaningful life, touching on everything from standing up straight to taking care of oneself. It's not just a self-help book, it's a guide to navigating the complexities of human existence. It spoke to this yearning for meaning, I think, especially in a world that can feel so chaotic. People are searching for something to hold on to, something that gives their lives a sense of purpose and direction. Peterson's work taps into that deep-seated need, offering a framework for understanding oneself and the world. His influence extends beyond just his books and lectures. He's become a cultural phenomenon, a beacon for those seeking clarity in a confusing world. And then you have Pope Francis, this figure of radical empathy, a man who has captured the hearts of millions around the world. His approach is not just about religious doctrine, but about living those teachings in the most practical and compassionate ways possible. Constantly pushing for social justice, environmentalism, and the protection of the most vulnerable among us, Pope Francis has become a beacon of hope for many. His speeches often highlight the urgent need to address climate change, poverty, and inequality, urging global leaders and everyday people alike to take action. A real departure from his predecessors, wouldn't you say? His focus on the poor, the marginalized, and those left behind by society is truly remarkable. He doesn't just talk about these issues from the comfort of the Vatican. He goes out into the world, meeting with those who are suffering and offering them tangible support. It's a different emphasis for sure. Previous popes have spoken about these issues, but Pope Francis seems to live them in a way that is deeply personal and profoundly impactful. His actions speak as loudly as his words, if not louder. Francis is looking outward at the systems, the structures that perpetuate injustice. He calls for a collective awakening, urging us to recognize the interconnectedness of all life and the importance of caring for our common home, Earth. His encyclicals and public addresses often emphasize the need for systemic change to create a more just and equitable world. Pope Francis asks us to look at the bigger picture, to see how our actions impact others, and to take responsibility for creating a world that reflects the values of compassion, justice, and love. His approach is a call to action, a reminder that faith without works is dead, and that true spirituality is lived out in service to others. And that's where the real clash happens, isn't it? There are different interpretations of what it means to be a Christian in the 21st century. Exactly. Peterson sees Francis's emphasis on social justice as a distraction, a watering down of the core message. He's even gone so far as to say, this is not Christianity, right? A pretty strong statement, very strong. But I think it's important to understand where Peterson is coming from. I think he sees a danger in aligning the church too closely with any political agenda. He's worried about the secularization of the church, right? Losing sight of the spiritual mission. Exactly. And it's a concern shared by many conservative Catholics. They see Francis's pronouncements on climate change, economic inequality, as straying too far from the traditional doctrines. Yes. And I think it's important to remember the historical context here too, the specter of liberation theology. Yes. That's a key element, isn't it? This idea that Francis is somehow influenced by this movement that emerged in Latin America, emphasizing the church's role in fighting oppression. Peterson sees it as a dangerous ideology, a slippery slope towards Marxism in his view. Right. And while Francis hasn't explicitly endorsed liberation theology, his emphasis on social justice does resonate with some of its core tenets. So, where does that leave us? A church divided? An unbridgeable chasm? I wouldn't say unbridgeable. I think this tension, this dialogue, even if it's a difficult one, is actually vital for the church's future. How so? Well, it's because it brings to light the very core of what the church stands for and what it aims to achieve in the modern world. The church has always been a place of refuge, a place of guidance, and a place of community. But in today's rapidly changing world, it faces new challenges and questions that it must address head-on, because it forces us to confront these fundamental questions that are not just theological but also social, cultural, and even political. The church is not an isolated entity. It exists within the broader context of society. And as society evolves, so too must the church. This dialogue, this tension, is a reflection of that evolution. It's a necessary process of growth and adaptation. What does it mean to be a Christian today? This is a question that every believer must grapple with. In a world that is increasingly secular, where traditional values are constantly being challenged, what role does faith play? How do we live out our beliefs in a way that is both true to our convictions and relevant to the world around us? These are not easy questions, but they are essential ones. How do we balance personal faith with social responsibility? This is another crucial question. Faith is not just a private matter, it has public implications. It calls us to act, to serve, to make a difference in the world. But how do we do that in a way that respects the diversity of beliefs and values in our society? How do we engage with the world without compromising our own principles? These are the kinds of questions that this dialogue is bringing to the forefront. It's a conversation that needs to happen. Absolutely. It's a conversation that is long overdue. For too long, these questions have been pushed to the margins, ignored or dismissed. But now, thanks to this dialogue, they are being brought into the light. And that is a good thing. It's a sign that the church is alive, that it is engaged, that it is willing to wrestle with the difficult issues. And I think the Peterson-Francis clash, as polarizing as it's been, has at least brought these questions to the forefront. It has sparked a conversation that is both necessary and valuable. It has challenged us to think deeply about our faith, about our values, and about our place in the world. And in the end, that can only be a good thing. Because it is through this kind of dialogue that we grow, that we learn, and that we become better, both as individuals and as a community. Please subscribe to our channel, History Documentary Hub, for more insightful videos and intriguing content.